Happy Mother's Day to all of you who are mothers and to all of you who have had mothers. I think that's everybody.
Oh.
As I pondered the reading today for the gospel, I began to wonder how often reading this gospel and John's farewell discourse falls on Mother's Day, because it feels like an entirely appropriate day to reflect on Jesus' commissioning of the advocate, or the Spirit of truth, to be with disciples after he is no longer with them. As most of you know, I went off to seminary when I was 50 years old. I'm not sure I realized how inculcated my sense of the masculine God was until I was pulled up short by an Old Testament professor who threw red slashes through my gendered references to God in my papers. When I said him, he wrote, "We use gender-neutral language when we refer to God," with huge exclamation points. Note taken, I never made that mistake again. I went to Union, by the way, which is like a very liberal place in New York. But it was definitely a memorable moment. In my years at Union, I encountered female theologians, feminist theologians, like Elaine Pagels and Mary Daly, Sally McFay, Elizabeth Johnson, Catherine Keller, who, among many others, speak to a feminine idea of birthing something new, a process by which God is coercive rather than directive, creative rather than mandating, nurturing rather than admonishing. It feels to me that even in the decade that has passed since my first days at Union, the idea of feminist theology feels a little anachronistic. Mainstream theology acknowledges that the feminine voice is embodied in the three persons of the Trinity. It's not revolutionary, not at all. It's ancient, and it's available to anyone who looks beneath the top notes of sanctioned catechism. And what the reader will find is a world of research and scholarship. In his interview with Elaine Pagels in 1995, the New Yorker's David Remnick wrote, "Pagels made it clear that early Christianity was far more complicated than anyone ever imagined. A wildly diverse compendium of poems, chants, myths, gospels, pagan documents, spiritual instruction, texts evidence of a fierce theological debate, and of an alternative tradition in early Christianity. In the Gnostic Gospels, Pagan writes that the Divine Mother aligns along three main lines. The Divine Mother is part of the original couple. Second, she is 1/3 of the Christian Trinity as spirit. And third, she represents wisdom and enlightens humans through her actions." In this passage, we get to imagine what might have influenced John, or perhaps where the gospel writer made some of his own assumptions regarding gender. Jesus says, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments. And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you forever." The advocate in Greek is a paraclete, which means helper, para alongside, kalling, to call. In the Jewish tradition, the angels and prophets advocate before God's court. But in John, the development is that the Spirit replaces Jesus as an advocate to abide within his disciples, to inspire and to console. The Master is going to depart, but the Spirit will always be among them and within them. So I'll tell you, when I was in seminary, I thought it would be a wonderful idea to explore the idea of the homoousios, which is a term used in our creed to describe the oneness of the Father and the Son, the substance. That was a rookie move. Don't do that. The library had literally thousands of volumes, parsing out exactly what that means. In the early church, people died trying to get this right, literally. I found I was in dangerously close waters as I went down the rabbit hole of possibilities with the Paraclete. I invite you, like others, to read the next verse in our reading for today with the feminine pronoun to describe the helper. John writes, "This is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive because it neither sees her or knows her. You know her, because she abides with you and she will be with you." How does that sound? When I heard it for the first time, it felt to me like I was coming home to a new yet deeply familiar and entirely more palatable way of imagining a triune God. The spirit or breath known in the Old Testament is ruah, and it's feminine. Motherly imagery of birthing and nurturing are numerous throughout the Hebrew Bible. Think of Isaiah as the mother who comforts her son. Holy wisdom in Proverbs is known, of course, as Sophia, and she is wise. She's a creative force that is generating and life-giving, dynamic instead of absolute and final. Wisdom speaks from the streets in the public squares. The prophetic female does work that is dangerous. This is a voice that needs to be heard and heeded, not one that demands fealty to a patriarchal notion of proper behavior, but one that demands an honest reckoning with the truth of our experience so that we are able to learn and grow. The language that John uses echoes the wisdom of Solomon when Jesus says, "If you love me, you will hold fast to my commandments." As we all know, the commandments may seem simple, but the truth in loving our neighbor is more complex than we really can admit. In Carl Sandburg's poem, Home, he writes, "Here is a thing my heart wishes the world had more of. I heard it in the air of one night when I listened to a mother singing softly to a child restless and angry in the darkness." What if our world, angry and restless, was met with Mother Jesus? Mystic Brian McLaren writes, Jesus would never have broken through as a genuinely new revelation if he had acted non-violently inside of a feminine body. It would not have been revolutionary because we expect and demand that women be patient, nurturing, forgiving, healing, self-effacing, and self-sacrificing. Women are expected to be non-violent in a violent male society. Jesus had a male body, but a very feminine soul, which was genuinely new. I don't have any problem imagining Jesus infused with a spirit that abides and consoles and advocates and teaches and loves. In trying to establish a community of equals, Jesus challenged the real world of dominion and subordination and engaged feminine wisdom, and by doing so, disrupted the status quo. It's been 10 years since I made the mistake of gendering God in a student paper. When I hear a patient refer to the divine nature as him, I admit that a little thought bubble now forms in my head that says, or her. In Genesis, we are told that the image of God is reflected in both man and woman. God is the breath that is Ruah. It is embodied in the wisdom of Sophia. God is housed within the three Marys and is heard in the voice of the prophets. She is the daily creativity that sustains the Gaia Earth herself. On this Mother's Day, let's celebrate the myriad of ways women have shown that wisdom and mercy and love lie waiting to be ignited in each and every one of us. Amen.